Yeah. Hello, welcome. Sorry, it was a mixture between English and German. Welcome to Smarter German's next live class. That's our fourth live class already, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken. And hopefully not the last. So we will see what else is coming up. And before we get started, let me give you a very quick overview. And give me 1 second. I also have to see. I have to watch my own live class. Good. Noch einmal herzlich willkommen. Today, I would like to speak about a topic that many learners, German learners, struggle with. It has to do with dative and accusative. And a very neat way of understanding those is by looking at verbs that can take two objects. Yeah. Just to give you a little idea of what is expecting you today, we have roughly half an hour. That's more than enough. Yeah, it's weekend. And in the beginning, I will run you through a presentation of mine in which I will guide you through the topic verbs and objects and dative and accusative and how they are related. And after those 10-15 minutes, you can ask questions. Either you ask questions to the topic or you ask any German learning related questions, and I'll give my best to answer them quickly. Yeah, or at least let you know where you find the answers. Okay, I will share that presentation with you. If there's anything, with me is Alexandra, who always supports me here. She will send me your questions and will also give me feedback if something goes wrong. Okay. If you don't know me yet, my name is Michael, and I'm the creator of Smarter German, a system that helps people to learn German faster with more joy and more precision. And that's my life's calling. I will do this until I die. It's a very, very powerful and lovely program, and I deeply enjoy working on this and with the German language, and of course with all those who learn German. Language learning is something very, very emotional, very intimate. It's a really touching job, I have to say, in the sense of, satisfying, deeply satisfying job. Okay, let me share my presentation with you. I'll vanish for a while. I come back after that. So you will see a little interesting screen for a second. Here we go. No, that's not the beginning. Here we go. Now, let me tell you about verbs with two objects. The first question that should arise is, okay, if there's verbs with two objects, most likely there's also verbs with less or more objects. So let's take a look at that. There is a couple of possibilities when it comes to verbs. So there is verbs that can have exactly 0 objects. And you see I've zeroed out or crossed out the part after friere. Ich friere means I'm freezing. And you couldn't really say, or it also means I'm cold. So you couldn't say I'm cold a jacket or something. Yeah, you could say I'm freezing a jacket, but that would be a completely different word in German. So frieren doesn't take anything afterwards, at least not without making quite some effort. Another example would be ich komme, I'm coming. You couldn't say I'm coming a car or I'm coming a city. That doesn't work. You would have to say I'm coming to a city, but then you wouldn't talk about objects anymore. Sorry, that was my Siri who felt I addressed it. Then there is verbs that can take one object. For example, drinking. You can drink something. The something is what we call objects, an object in grammar, in grammatical terms. So you can drink a tea or a coffee, but that's about it. You cannot add anything else to this without applying a couple of tricks or modifications. So there's a couple of these. You could also say I love, ich liebe meinen Sohn, I love my son, and that's mainly it. And now we come, excuse me, I'm slow with the translations. Then we have those that can take two objects. And you can see I've colored them here in different colors, and that's a quite common coloring. You color the dative red and the accusative blue. You might find that with other tutors or in other materials as well. So you can bring a T, and if you bring a T, you can also bring that T to a person. So I've always translated the dative with to my or to a person. So these are the options. There aren't any verbs with 3 objects, so you're lucky. And one other thing you need to keep in mind, if I talk about verbs with 2 objects, they do not have to have 2 objects. They can take 2 objects. We get to that later. Now let's take a look. As I've mentioned, if you have objects, you have to deal with cases. And the most important cases next to the nominative, which we don't talk about today, are accusative and dative. Now the question is, what are these actually? And it's simpler as you may think. Accusative and dative are actually nothing else but an agglomeration, a group of endings. Yeah, take a look at these examples here. You have meinen or einen. You could even say keinen or diesen, welchen, den. All 6 articles take this ending if it's masculine, for example, in accusative. So accusative is just this group of endings, en, nothing, e, and e. Please note that the x is just there to tell you there is no ending. It is not an x. So for dative, we have the same. We just have a different group of endings. And this group you find here. You don't have to worry about remembering this for this presentation because I will always color the accusative blue and the dative red. But in the long run, it makes sense that you learn these endings by heart. There is a wonderful live class of ours about the German cases, in which I also linked to a beautiful song of Margaret's, where she helps you to memorize all these endings with a beautiful song. And it's almost joyful to learn the German grammar in that way. Yeah, take a look at my other live classes and also my material. In my materials, we also teach you these things. But for now, that is not important. So just to summarize it, accusative and dative are mainly a set of endings that you find at the end of articles like here, or at times at the end of an adjective. Good. Now let's go to the main topic, verbs with 2 objects. Ich bringe einen Tee. I bring a tea. So you can see there's only one object here. Yeah. And that object is tea. So the thing that is being brought, that is the object that we have. When we only have one object, in almost all cases, in all the situations, you have an accusative object. So if you're not sure what to choose for the object, dative or accusative, you simply guess accusative. The exceptions where there is a dative object are very rare and easily learned. Simply guess the accusative. You're almost always on the safe side. Now, bringen is actually a verb that allows 2 objects. So let's add one to this. Here you see we have to make a little space. We tear this a little bit apart to squeeze the dative object in the middle. Ich bringe meinem Vater einen Tee. I bring my father a tea, or to my father a tea. And please note that I chose a literal translation in gray just to show you the German sentence structure. I think you can make sense of these sentences easily. Yeah. Now you see we have 2 objects, and you see already an order here, a sentence order about which we will speak later on as well. Now, there's one thing to notice. Whenever you have a verb with 2 objects, there is almost something like a system. You always, with bringing, you always bring a thing. And if there's a person involved that you bring the thing to, it's always the dative. So the thing you bring is always the accusative, And the person that receives that thing is always the dative. Now, you have to be careful. These things, yeah, sometimes I hear things like, oh, the receiver of a thing is always dative. That is not true. Yeah, the receiver of a thing, like here, when there is a thing and a receiver, a person, only when there is two objects, then this rule applies. Otherwise, you might get into trouble. Okay, I give you one example. I haven't written it down. If I call my father, some people think, yeah, the father is the receiver of my call, right? So the father is a person, also must be dative. That's wrong. Because if you call your father, ich rufe meinen Vater an, you only have one object. And as I just said, you would then apply the accusative. And you are most likely right. In this case, you're right. So be very careful. The rules I tell you today only apply if there is two objects involved. Let's continue. There's one other thing you should know. Now you see there's always one red object and one blue object. And that is because there can only be one object of each kind or of each case. German teachers among you will complain, no, there is some that take two accusatives. Yes, that's true. But a beginning German learner does not need to know these. There is like 4, maybe a 5th one that I don't even remember, that take two accusatives. You as a beginner, even until deep B2, you can ignore that fact. When you have two objects in a sentence, it's always one dative and one accusative, which helps you a lot when you write, for example. You can then figure out it can only be one of each kind. Keep that in mind, please. Now, just to give you a couple of examples, if you learn the following 8 verbs and work with them for a while, you make yourself familiar and you will be secure in using those cases. So common verbs with two objects. Ich mache dir einen Kaffee. I make you a coffee, or I make a coffee for you. And you see I put the dir in brackets. And I did so because the dative supplement here is actually optional. You at least have to say, I make a coffee. Yeah, you cannot just say, I make. Then what do you make? So you always have to say at least, ich mache einen Kaffee, so at least have to add an accusative with these verbs. If there's another person involved or you want to make yourself a coffee, you have to say, ich mache mir einen Kaffee oder ich mache dir einen Kaffee. So the dative is optional, but you see where it has to go. And as you saw from my translation, I said, I make you a coffee or I make a coffee for you. In English, you very often refer to prepositions like for or to. In German, we do not need to do that. The dative includes the to already, as you can see in the Great Translation. Take a look at another example. Er kauft seinem Sohn ein Handy. He buys his son a mobile phone. So this also works nicely without the to in English. Take a look at the next example. Ich erzähle meinen Kindern eine Geschichte. It's a slight delay on the YouTube. I'll give you a second. Here we go. So, ich erzähle meinen Kindern eine Geschichte. I always let you guess or translate on your own a couple of seconds. So I tell my kids a story. And you see, I tell a story could stand on its own. And sometimes you tell a story to someone. So you add the dative to it in between the verb and the accusative. One more example. Kannst du ihm mal eine Gabel geben, bitte? One second. Now you can see it. Kannst du ihm mal eine Gabel geben, bitte? Can you give him a fork, please? Now, you can ignore the mal here. I just put it because it's normal, natural German. That's another topic for another day. But I want you to notice that here we have two verbs. We have the kannst in the beginning, and the geben at the end. And the kannst has no influence whatsoever on the cases. It's the geben that allows us to use two objects if we like. Yeah, keep that in mind. There's only one verb in every sentence you come across that actually matters most and that influences these things. A couple of more examples. Hat seiner Freundin Blumen geschenkt. Nothing special here, although you see there's also two verbs. You have hat in the beginning and geschenkt at the end. The hat has no influence whatsoever. It doesn't even have a meaning. It's the geschenkt, which means to gift something to someone. He has gifted flowers to his girlfriend. That allows us to use two objects. Let me click a bit faster so you can see that better. I'm sorry if I'm silent every now and then, because there's a little, I see on my iPad there's a little delay. So I pause just a couple of minutes. You can take the time to digest the information. Now the next sentence would be, verrätst du mir deine Telefonnummer? Nothing special here. The verb verraten means to disclose. It also means to betray, but there's nothing to betray when it comes to telephone numbers. So to disclose. Will you disclose your telephone number to me? One more. Ich möchte mir dein Auto leihen. You will see soon. Number 7. Here we go. Once again, we have two verbs, möchten, would like, and leihen, to borrow. If you borrow it, yeah? So leihen is the one that's responsible for us, or allowing us to use two objects. And one last example, number 8, Nummer 8. Wollte dem Polizisten seinen Namen nicht sagen. Once again, you have two verbs here, wollte, wanted, and sagen, to say. Sagen is the one that allows us to use two objects. Now, I hope that is already pretty clear. There is one thing you need to keep in mind, and that comes now. There is a couple of situations in which you think these are objects, but they are not. By the way, when I talk about objects, let me stress that one more time. I'm not talking about physical objects. A person can as well be an object in grammar as a thing. Yeah, we're talking merely about grammatical objects. That has not much to do with your reality, unfortunately. Now, the next example, you will see, ich habe mit meiner Freundin gesprochen. I have spoken with my girlfriend. Gesprochen is the relevant verb, but we have no object here. The underlined text is dative, but because we used mit. That's a completely different matter. Mit is what we call a preposition, preposition. And whenever you have a preposition, you do not have an object. Yeah, that's then a prepositional supplement. There is a couple of people calling this a prepositional object. Please throw these books away. That's confusing. It's a prepositional supplement, and even that you do not have to remember. All you need to know is it's not an object, and it's dative because it uses mit. A couple of more examples. Number 10. Number 10 will be, kommst du zu mir? Which means, do you come to my place? Here you can see it. Kommst du zu mir? And you see here, you have kommen, and I told you before that kommen is one of those words that do not have an object. Yeah, you have to use prepositions to actually convey information, further information. So zu is a preposition again, and as you can see with the color, and maybe you know that mir is a dative. Zu demands the dative. Two more examples quickly. Next one, 11, would be, ich denke an dich. I am thinking of you. An dich is underlined, and it's blue because it's accusative. You might know that dich is accusative. If you think of I love you in German, do you know what that means? Ich liebe dich. Yeah? So they have a wonderful example of an accusative object. But ich denke an dich uses an, which is another preposition. And in this case, it is accusative. Don't ask yourself why this is accusative. That's a matter that is a bit more advanced. It's called verbs with prepositions. You find all these things explained very, very neatly in my A1 to B1 German grammar course. So you should really take a look at my homepage and at that material. One last example of not an object, or actually a combination of an object with a non-object. Number 12. Trinkt einen Tee mit mir. He drinks a tea with me. Now you see there is an object, einen Tee. It's not underlined, so it's an object. And it's the thing you drink. And if you remember from the very beginning, drinking was one of those verbs that can have one object. Here we have it, einen Tee. That means there cannot be any other object. So mit mir cannot be an object, because trinken doesn't allow. But as you know from example number 9 above, mit is a preposition that causes dative or requires the dative, and therefore we have another supplement here. So I hope the difference between objects and non-objects is clear, and also what to use when. Now let's lose a couple of words about the sentence order. When you have certain elements in a sentence, the question is, in what order do I put them? You've already noticed that the red came before the blue. That is almost always the case, but let me show you. The general order is what I call da-da. And I just doubled the da. Da would have done the job, dative before accusative. This is what you've seen throughout this presentation. Ich bringe meinem Vater einen Tee. Dative, meinem Vater, comes for accusative, einen Tee. And even if I have a personal pronoun, ihm, him, I bring him a tea, the dative still comes first. So I call this da-da. It's easier to remember. Yeah, dative before accusative. Now take a look at the following examples, and maybe you can see or create a rule for yourself for the exception. Now we start again with ich bringe meinem Vater einen Tee. Here everything is as above, but the moment you replace T for ihn, you have to put the ihn before the dative. Now, if you're wondering why I say ihn, which means him, that is because T is masculine in German. And things in German have genders, unlike in English, or in English it's not that obvious that they have genders. And therefore we have to use the appropriate personal pronoun. So a T is a masculine thing. I have to say, I bring him to my father. And even if you use him for my father, you still, the accusative pronoun ihn has priority. So ich bringe ihn ihm would actually translate literally into I bring him to him. Yeah, I bring it to him would be the proper translation. Now I think you figured out the rule as we went. It's whenever you have an accusative personal pronoun, that one comes first. That comes before the dative. Keep that in mind. I think it's doable if you use the preaching approach, the preaching technique that I teach in my How to Learn German Faster course on my homepage. You can get that course. You will master this within a couple of days. 3 days of solid practice should make you, should help you to master this easily. I hope you see it's not really complicated. That was actually it. Maybe you watch it later. Again, we will send you the link afterwards. Let me come back into sight. Hello. I hope you followed me a little bit. I hope it was not too fast or too complex. Let me know any feedback. Here you are. Any feedback is welcome. I'm more than happy to answer your questions now. It was actually a bit longer than I rehearsed. So very nice. I took my time. So I'm happy to receive your questions, and we'll see what I can do. If there's no questions, I might start singing, so you better ask something, because my voice is not really the nicest to listen to. Why does it matter that these are not objects? Asks Michael. Well, if they are objects, you have a very beautiful way to distinguish which one of these has to be written in dative and which one of these has to be written in accusative. That's one point. The other thing, if you use mit, aus, bei, those have their own rules. They define the cases simply because they are dative prepositions or accusative prepositions, or like we talked about in our last live class about the two-way prepositions or two-case prepositions, depending on whether you are on a fixed location or on a moving towards a location. Yeah. So it will help you to distinguish objects from non-objects when you write, and if you practice it enough, also when you speak. I hope that makes some kind of sense to you, Michael. Question from YouTube. So YouTube asked me itself, wo kann man neue Kontakte knüpfen, die Deutsch können? So where can you establish contacts with Germans or with people who speak German? Yeah, that's always the problem. So it always depends a little bit on your character. If you're a bit outgoing, it's much easier as when you are an introvert. There's meetups. They're called meetups, which are sorted by interest. So there's people who like to party. There's people who like to collect stamps or read books or are interested in psychoanalysis. And those people meet up, and with a bit of luck, you find some Germans there. And nothing binds or connects people better than a common interest. Yeah. And then there is a platform called Internations. They have parties in which you can meet expats, and there is quite a high number of Germans there, people who have lived abroad and just want to share their experience. Those two are very neat ways to get to know Germans. And take a look at these web pages. You can also go to a local sports club or a local club. There's many Vereine clubs in Germany, and they certainly will welcome you if you have a genuine interest in what they do. WD person. I have a question about the da compound words. What's the best way to learn these? I find them hard to figure out to what the da is referring. Dear WD person, that's a whole new live class, to be honest. The underlying topic of this is verbs with prepositions. You need to know which preposition comes with which verb. I cannot, sorry for the verb. Now, for example, I'm waiting for the bus. In German, it has nothing to do with for. It's ich warte auf den Bus. And this auf is what you need for these da compounds. And I would need a presentation to make that very clear to you. It's really hard to do this in the air, and it takes more time. Yeah, I also do not cover in detail in my courses, but the verbs of preposition issue is covered there. Andy asks, I've always struggled with detecting when to use what case. Do you have a special way to know, or any exercises on your website to help? Andy, there is a live class, or actually the last two live classes covered the German cases and two case prepositions. And those are excellent ways to figure out which case to use, especially the one about the German cases. I suggest you watch these. There's a couple of ideas that help you to figure out which ones to use. Like today, I told you when there is a verb that can have two objects, it's the person that is dative and the thing that is accusative. That is one of these beautiful and simple rules. And what you can do, let me give you a little tip. You can take a text And first of all, take a red pen or red highlighter and highlight all the datives. Make sure to have a table or a list of the dative endings next to you so you can identify them in case there's endings, and highlight them first, and then figure out why is it dative. Try to understand. This is a good practice. And then you do the same for accusative. That, of course, assumes that you know certain rules already, yeah? But with these two or last three live classes, you should be able to identify most of the datives and accusatives and understand why. Let me repeat one more time. Dative and accusative are nothing special. It's just a set of endings, yeah? The ones that you saw on the presentation and that I will send to you tomorrow. Just learn these couple of endings and look out for them. Whenever you learn something new about grammar, take a text and look, where is the grammar? Grammar is everywhere. It's the skeleton, it's the bones of a text. So take a look at that and you will see it's everywhere, and actually from a certain point onwards it makes sense. Raj asks, what if dative verbs come with two objects? That's impossible. Unless you give me an example, I'm not all-knowing. I'm always happy to learn new things, Raj. A dative verb is called dative verb because it takes a dative object. If it takes two objects, it's not a dative verb. It's a verb with two objects. As simple as that. And when it comes to dative verbs, there's only a couple that you need to learn. Yeah? For example, ich danke dir, ich gratuliere dir, wie geht es dir, ich helfe dir, und mir ist kalt. Those 5 do the job for now, and there's a couple of more, and then you should be fine. I wouldn't bloat that up that significantly. I will one day create an app just for the sake of it, but dative verbs is not that tricky. Alex asks, will you create any course materials for levels higher than B1? Yes, Alex, I have a B2 course, and even if you already are on level B2 or beyond B1, my materials are different from anything else you know, because they do not only teach you the grammar or teach you a deep understanding of the underlying logic and system of the German grammar, they also teach you learning techniques for things that do not make sense, like the articles, dative verbs, irregular verbs, verbs with prepositions, adjective endings. And these things are useful no matter what level you are. Yeah, maybe C2 level should know all these things already. So, but anything higher than B2, I honestly do not see any value in creating, because first of all, there is already enough good material at that stage, and there is no more new grammar after B2. The grammar after that is just very refined B1 grammar or B2 grammar even, and therefore I do not need to create new courses. And on that level, you should be able to read almost any text with the help of a dictionary and make sense of that. Although if you read specialized text like philosophical text, that is always difficult, but you should only do that if you already have a good standing or a good understanding of philosophy in your own language, for example. Yeah. Okay. If there's one last question, I will go for it. You can always also write to me. I strongly recommend, if it's a question, a rather simple question, that you read my blog or you look me up on Quora. I answer many questions there, and as well on my blog. And if you have the idea, if you feel I can help you with anything, just write me. It's worth a try. Yeah, I usually get back to all those who write to me. Unless they only write one line, then I'm sorry. If you don't put any effort in contacting me, then I don't put any effort in answering you. Yeah, so make a little effort, and I'm more than happy to help you. Okay, that's enough for today. Yeah. Thank you very much. Please watch it again. Take your time. I hope it helped you a little bit. Let me know whether you liked it and what you were struggling with or what is not clear yet. I want to learn from you as well, so I can improve this presentation. Good. I wish you a nice weekend. Ich wünsche dir ein schönes Wochenende und viel Erfolg mit deinem Deutsch. Wir sehen uns. Bis bald.